Yes. Good evening, everyone. We're so glad to have Nicole Lyon here with us tonight from Ecumen. And we're going to have this presentation on advanced care and planning for advanced care. So, Nicole, we're super happy to have you tonight. Thanks for joining us, and we're excited to learn from you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through a PowerPoint that is prepared. If there's any questions at any point in this, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or jump in to ask questions. And can everybody see the PowerPoint all right?
Yeah, it looks great.
Perfect. All right, so we'll just get started here. So advanced care planning is something that is not necessarily the favorite thing for people to talk about because it requires looking at some really hard topics like, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be intubated? All these things that go into what your wishes are at any particular time in life. It is an ongoing process. We like to say, at this stage of my life, being a younger person, I would want to have CPR. I would want to have intubation if it's going to be beneficial for me. But for other people who are, later in life, or they have chronic illnesses, or they're at the end of life, those having CPR done can be really brutal and not be a beneficial thing for them. Oftentimes, older people, older adults who end up having CPR in the hospital for resuscitation, you end up with broken cartilage, broken bones, which can lead to pneumonia, which can lead to being on a ventilator. And outcomes of that are not like they are on TV. Oftentimes, we see CPR being done and somebody is miraculously saved and they're up and running a marathon the next day. And that's just not the reality. So, really, advanced care planning is doing a lot of conversation with your family, with whoever you choose to have be your healthcare agent, the person that you trust to make decisions for you, and really provides the direction to your family and to the healthcare providers who are caring for you at that time. Um, but it's something, it's like I said, it's a fluid thing. It can change. So right now, at this stage of my life, I would want to have life-saving measures taken place. Later on in my life, I will probably revise that to meet the needs that I have and the wishes that I have.
So Nicole, I was
Yeah.
intrigued because I just thought, you talked about it's like for any stage of life. And it's not something like I think about that much for myself, but is it really a good idea for younger people to have something like this in place?
It's not a bad idea, especially I think of one of my coworkers who I was just talking with earlier this week, whose daughter is going off to college, and he is having her fill out one, primarily because she's of the age where she is in charge, excuse me, of her own medical decisions and medical care. However, since she is going out of state to go to college, to have a healthcare directive that says that her parents can make decisions on her care should something happen, yes, it's very important to have that. So that feeds right into this slide. So oftentimes, when somebody is in a car accident, and they're in a coma or they're unable to make decisions for themselves, that is partly why this advanced care planning is so important. It helps it helps the parents know, it helps the family know what your wishes are so that those decisions can be informed decisions that are made with the provider rather than the provider saying, this is what we're going to do because we don't know what this person's wishes are. And it helps the family feel less distressed about decisions that they've made because there have been these conversations back and forth regularly about, my wishes are such and such, my wishes are this. And so family is very aware and very clear about what those wishes are so that they can honor those, which leads to improved likelihood that your healthcare wishes are followed and fulfilled. This doesn't mean, it may take some time. Let's say somebody is in a car accident, is in a coma, is unable to say what their wishes are, and it takes the hospital a day or two to find the next of kin or the person who is able to have that conversation with someone. In that case, all life-saving measures will be completed because the hospital has to care for that person. They can't just make that decision for that person. So all cares will be provided. But at that point, when it's known, then that helps to facilitate that person's wishes. All right, so then moving on, where do you begin? It's just identifying what kind of life-saving treatments that you wish to have. Primarily, we talk about the do not resuscitate and then do not intubate, because those are the big ones. As I talked about with CPR and resuscitation, it doesn't often look like what CPR looks like on TV. In fact, when CPR was created, it was created primarily, or it was only created for people who were younger, who were victims of drowning or electrocution. It had nothing to do with somebody who just has a heart attack or who was struggling in some other way. It was only a method of life-sustaining treatment for somebody who was drowning or electrocuted. Nowadays, we do it all the time. And if it's done properly, like I said, you have broken ribs, you have the real possibility. Anytime CPR is done, it usually leads to ventilation, to being on a ventilator, and it usually leads to some kind of pneumonia or something because of the pain that's associated with the correct compressions that are done. And then intubation, do you wish to be sustained by tube feeding? Is that something that you want? And these are things that you have conversations with your family. It's not, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not you. I don't know what your wishes are. I don't know what your beliefs are in that. So it's definitely something that you have that conversation, start that conversation with your family, and really talk through what you want to have done for yourself. If you are diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer, what kind of treatment do you want? Do you want something done knowing what you know about your diagnosis? Again, if you're a young person, you probably want life-sustaining measures, and depending on what an illness is, you might want to have various treatments done for you. And so really it is mostly it's about having that conversation and sharing that with your family and your loved ones. And then it is a process of filling out the actual form. There's a whole bunch of different forms. I think we have this one, which will be shared in the Silver Bay Public Library system. And it's just, there are multiple different forms out there. It's a specific form is not necessary as long as your directive meets the legal requirements. And we'll go into that here in a minute. But I think the biggest piece to remember is that this document can change as your wishes and your desires change, as various disease process come into account. This can be changed. It's not a once said and done. It's something that should be reviewed on a semi-regular basis. So the first component of a healthcare directive is appointing a healthcare agent. That is the person that you choose to make healthcare decisions only if you are unable to do so. Again, in the case of, maybe you are intubated, maybe you are on a ventilator, maybe you are unable to speak for yourself. This person is the person that you trust to carry out your wishes, even if that means pulling the plug, even if that means saying, no, we're not going to do this. And it really, they need to be accessible. If you have somebody that you trust and you want them to make your healthcare decisions, but they live off grid in the middle of nowhere, and are impossible to get a hold of, that's probably not the best person to have as your healthcare agent. They also need to be able to stand up to pressure from family members and friends and even healthcare providers who are going to push their wishes and their desires for your loved one. At times when you're making decisions like this, it can be really challenging, really trying, but you know that this person has said that this is what their wish is, and your goal is to make sure that that is honored. So choosing somebody that you can trust is really the first step here. And then second, you want to leave instructions for them. And this is where sometimes having a form to fill out is really helpful. That form will be very specific. It will walk through various steps. The one that I have an example of for you guys is it's very clear. It talks about CPR. It talks about intubation. It talks about all the various things, and even some things that you may not have thought about. And just talks about, I want this. Some of them are say, I want this if it looks like I might be healed. I don't want this if it doesn't look in your best, professional opinion that I would survive this. Don't do it. So it just, you want to leave those instructions and make sure that those are clear for your healthcare agent to be able to speak clearly about your wishes. Both of these are optional, having a healthcare agent and leaving instructions, but at least one of the two have to be there in order for your healthcare directive to be a valid thing. So if you choose not to have a healthcare agent, or there's not somebody that you really trust to be your healthcare agent, you can just leave those instructions and have those very clearly laid out, and that would be enough. Having both in place is usually the best bet, but you only need to have one of those for sure.
Just a quick question on that then. And so if you, we're in a situation where you didn't choose a healthcare agent, would you then provide that to your medical provider? So it would become part of your medical records? They would pull it up that way?
Yep, absolutely. All right. And so the third thing is just making the document legal. This means different things in different parts of the country. In Minnesota, the requirements are that you have to have the capacity to understand and be able to share those healthcare wishes at the time the documentation is completed. So it has to be in writing, and it has to have your name on it, and it has to have the decision on who's going to be your healthcare agent and who is going to, or what your instructions are regarding that. You don't need an attorney to complete a healthcare directive. A lot of people kind of push this off to the side thinking, oh, I've got to hire an attorney or I have to do anything like that. That is not the case in Minnesota. All you need is a signature and a date with a notary of the public. Oftentimes there's notaries in hospitals who are available to help you, or two witnesses. Your two witnesses cannot usually be anybody who is named in your healthcare directive. So you need to have two other witnesses. It can't be your healthcare agent and somebody else. It needs to be two separate people. But again, the state laws are very different from state to state on how to do this. I think in Wisconsin, you are required to have an attorney's signature. In other states, different. So if you move a lot, or if you spend, half of your year in Florida and half of your year in Minnesota, it's wise to have a healthcare directive filled out in both places, just to make sure that you're covered and you have those things taken care of when the time comes.
And since you said that, how does travel impact like that? Would you just, if you like get hurt in a state, you're just like, maybe I went on a 2-week vacation and I got seriously injured, would they just honor it because I'm temporary resident, or is it more complicated than that?
That is a really good question, and I have a feeling it's way more complicated than that. But I would hope that somehow they would be able to get a hold of your healthcare agent. And this is where it's not necessarily a terrible thing to have maybe carry in your wallet, the name of your healthcare agent. just so that they can reach out to that person. It may very well be that whatever state you're in and have this accident or get very ill in is not going to honor. They'll usually honor what your wishes are. It just may not be the legal way that state likes to have those in place. Um, but if you
Mhm.
have a healthcare agent, they can provide that paperwork to that hospital or to that location just to make sure that you have that in place and they're
Yeah.
able to honor that then.
Yeah.
All right. So once you complete a healthcare directive, it's important that you keep the original. You have to give a copy to your healthcare agent. How else are they going to remember that, oh yeah, we signed this 3 years ago. Now there's this traumatic experience that I'm now in charge of making a decision here. I can't remember what we talked about. So it's important that they have a copy of it and that your physician has a copy of it. Your primary care physician usually is the one that hospitals will attempt to try to get a hold of to see if there is a healthcare directive in place if you come into an emergency room. So having that information up to date is really good. And talk with your family. Who is your healthcare agent? There may be some hurt feelings that you picked one child over another child to be your decision maker, but there, I think if you keep that line of communication open and make sure that they're aware of what your wishes are and why you have this, you don't even have to explain why you chose somebody over another. It's just a matter of making sure that family is aware of who is that healthcare agent. And then, like I said, review it periodically. When there's a significant change in health or life circumstances, and you want to maybe revisit the fact that you at one point wanted CPR and now you are more at the stage of, you know what, I've lived a good long life. I am happy with where life is. I don't feel like I need to accomplish anything more. So if something happens, I'm okay with not being resuscitated. Like I said, this document is very fluid and it is able to be changed at any time. And it's worth it. I mean, you should review it every few years at the very minimum, just to make sure. And just to make sure even that your healthcare agent didn't move or that they have a new address or a phone number, anything, to make it as easy as possible for when there is an emergency or when the time comes that decisions need to be made, they're able to be gotten a hold of. Are there any questions? I can stop sharing here.
Sorry, thanks.
There we go.
Bev, you if you have any questions, I have you muted, so you can just unmute on your screen to ask any questions. But thank you, that was really helpful. So it seems like if you were like, I mean, you mentioned some things that people like to have in their advanced care directives, but is it something you would maybe talk over with your primary physician based on your current health status that could help you like decide what types of things would be appropriate, or who do you
Yep.
best find that information from?
So, Dr. Google
Yeah.
is a great place to go. A lot of times we talk about, the big ones are the CPR and the DNR, the do not resuscitate or the do not intubate. Those are the big ones that we usually talk about. We don't usually talk about being on a ventilator so much. We don't usually talk about, um, IV antibiotics or pain medications, so those are some things that we don't often talk about, but they are definitely worthwhile either talking with your doctor about, or doing some Google searches within reason. Like go to
Yeah.
reputable
Yeah.
sites that will tell you honestly what things will look like. And there are sites out there that will tell you, if you have a chronic condition or something, what is the reality that CPR is going to be beneficial? What is the reality that that tube feedings are going to extend the quality of your life? And really, it sort of comes down to that. Do you want quality of life or do you want quantity of life? And those are, again, questions that you need to wrestle with yourself, and with your family and with your loved ones. Um,
You mentioned, and I just know sometimes that can be hard to know what is a good source for these types of things. And maybe you can't answer this right on the spot, but is there a chance you could share some good examples? And I saw that one of your
yeah,
links for a toolkit was the extension, which I know is a good source,
yep,
but are there some sources that you would recommend to find this information when
I
you're Googling?
would. Yes, there's a book called Loving, is it called? Loving Hard Choices. It's called Hard Choices for Loving People. And it is by Hank Dunn, Dunn. And it talks about, it's a really thorough, very short book. And it talks about CPR, artificial feeding, comfort care, um, and it goes through all of those things, and it goes through them in a very clear, easy to understand for non-medical people, um, and just really gives a really definitive answer to a lot of these questions that will come up or could come up. So I think that is a really great resource, that Hard Choices for Loving People. And like I said, it's just a very small book. You don't have to read it all in one day, but it's maybe an hour long read.
Sounds like a good one. I
Yeah,
should look to see if our library has.
Yes.
And
I have a
what we have.
question.
Yeah, go
Where
ahead,
is the
Bev.
best place to keep the healthcare directives?
Oh,
Where's the
that's a
best
great.
place?
Yep. So the best place, I would have one copy, um, at least one copy in your home, and I would probably save it where you save your important documents. Like the titles to your cars or things like that. I would save it in a place like that where it's not going to get lost or confused. I would make sure that you have one with the person that you've chosen to make those decisions for you. Also, it wouldn't hurt if you have multiple children or multiple friends, perhaps, who you want to make sure that, hey, if something happens, can you have a copy of this just in case? And then in addition, make sure that your primary care physician has a copy of it. If you're going in for a scheduled surgery, bring in a copy of it just in case. You just never know what's going to happen. But it's always good to make sure that those who are caring for you are going to have a way to get a hold of that healthcare agent or know what your wishes are.
We travel, and I've
Mhm.
wondered about taking one in uh, our camper,
Yeah,
in,
that would be
in our
fantastic.
car and truck, even.
Yep. Yeah, if you put one in the glove box just to have it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any like suggestions or resources? Because like you had said, sometimes this can be a hard conversation for people to have with their loved ones. Whether, because yeah, it's just hard to talk about this stuff sometimes. And so do you have like tips or suggestions for having these conversations with the people you care about so that you can all be on the same page?
Yeah, I think don't do it at a time that's really stressful already.
Yes.
Maybe don't start that conversation at a time when you're all in the hospital with a loved one. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe have a dinner together and just say, hey, we're gonna have some difficult conversations, but I want to make sure that you guys understand where I am with my health, and these are my wishes, and then open it up for conversation. There's a good chance that somebody in your family is not on board with the fact that you choose to have CPR or you choose not to have CPR. So talking through that conversation, and that's where that book as well, that Hard Choices for Loving People, can come in really handy, because it can be something that you can share and you can talk about. It might even be something where you guys go, hey, let's as a family get together and just read through this chapter on this particular topic and let's talk about it, just to sort of start that conversation going, because again, it is about having that open conversation with family.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're right, it is hard to have these conversations. I push my parents to do it all the time because they still don't
Yeah.
have one, and I'm like, you gotta have one.
This is
Like,
my
what
job.
do you guys want? Yes.
No, I totally hear you.
Yeah. And so it's funny how, you know, even though I know this, I still have in my family people who are not as open to having that conversation. And so just, sort of feeling where things are. But definitely. I think if you have that time where you're like, you know what, look, guys, not getting any younger. Every day we're
Right.
getting a little bit older.
Yes.
And it's time to start having some of these conversations about what our wishes are.
Mhm. And how do these interact with like assisted living facilities or nursing homes and things like that?
Sure, that's actually a fantastic question. Um, a lot of times, what a facility will require oftentimes that you have a healthcare directive in place. They might help you go through it and fill it out at that time. But what really needs to be done is so an assisted living facility or nursing home will always require that one of those is filled out. So the advanced care directive is your decision and your wishes. Okay. Oftentimes, and especially in hospice, we also have you fill out something called a POLST form, which is the provider's order for life-sustaining treatment. And what the POLST is, it's basically the same thing as your healthcare directive. It talks about, it addresses the CPR, it addresses whether or not you want to go, what kind of hospitalization you want, comfort care, artificial nutrition by tube, and the use of antibiotics. That's what that covers. And so that POLST, that provider order for life-sustaining treatment, is the provider orders. It's your doctor's orders saying, yes, we've had this conversation. This is what my patient wants. This is what we're going to go with. So depending on the facility, oftentimes you'll have one or the other. Most of the time they want a copy of that advanced care directive, but there's also that sort of more medical side of it that has that POLST form.
Thank you. That's awesome. Bev, do you have any other questions?
I don't know. I don't know if I do. I'm going through, I have a sister in memory care, and I'm hoping she has something like this written. I have no idea, but I do plan on finding out if she does. Because if she doesn't, I'll get her daughter and son together and.
Yeah, and
But you would
oftentimes
think if she is in memory care that she would need it. I would
if
think.
she, it's not necessarily that she wouldn't need it. It's that whatever she does now is not likely to be, it's not going to be counted as a legal document because she is in memory care,
Yes.
because she's not of sound mind at that point.
So could her children make it up?
Usually her children could look it up and see if she has one written somewhere. And if she doesn't, chances are they're going to go to the children first to see what they want done for her. And they would have had to fill something out probably at the time of admission
Before.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I plan on finding that out for them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. This was really helpful. And for you to know, but also for our general audience to know, this recording will be available on the library's YouTube channel indefinitely. And also the slides that Nicole went through will be linked in the comments of that of our YouTube video, as well as the resources around a template for an advanced care directive. So thanks for providing those things for us too, Nicole.
I do
It's
have
really
one
helpful.
question, one further question, if I
Yeah,
might ask
of course.
Nicole. It has to do with hospice. What are the rules for hospice? Who can get it? And is it always in a facility, or can it be in home?